So Salesforce AI winner or AI loser? So what happened to Salesforce that actually made the stocks down like minus 30%, especially minus 7% after earnings, even though that it has recovered a little bit. So we are going to see in this video like what happened during this Q2 2025 earnings for Salesforce, and if today this is a good opportunity to look and to add to your portfolio. So let's get started. Let's review now the main figures for Q2 fiscal year 26 for Salesforce. So the revenue actually landed at 10.2 billion this quarter, growing plus 10% year on year. So we've seen that subscription and support revenue was actually 9.7 billion, and that the CRPO actually established itself at 29.4 billion for Salesforce. So that's for their top line in terms of subscription and support revenue that they have. So we are seeing that the sales is coming with 2.3 billion, services coming with 2.5 billion, platform and other with 2.1, marketing and commerce 1.4, and integration analytics 1.5, especially with Tableau and MuleSoft. So we are seeing that actually Salesforce has a pretty diverse portfolio of services, and they are all bringing their fair share in terms of revenue. We are seeing that they are all growing at around 8 to 12%. So actually there is no real overperformer here, except as we are going to see afterwards. So the data and AI part, which is actually growing almost triple digits. So we are seeing that today that their data cloud plus AI in terms of ARR establishing itself at 1.2 billion, growing 120% year on year. So which is actually great. Also key number that they have communicated in this Q2 2026 for the fiscal year earnings is that they have more than 12,000 agent force deals. So basically their AI offerings for Salesforce. So actually like they are executing very well in terms of AI. So as we've seen in terms of top line, so we have actually some kind of conservative like high single digit and low double digit growth for Salesforce, with all the segments growing actually on average around 10%. And in terms of profit and cash, so we are seeing that the gap operating margin for Salesforce is becoming very interesting today at 22.8%, the non-GAAP at 34.3%, especially I think impacted by the share-based compensation. Still operating cash flow at 740 million, and the free cash flow for this quarter at 605 million. In terms of capital return, especially in terms of share repurchases, which is the main way they are returning capital to shareholders, establishing at 2.6 billion so for this quarter, which is actually good to see after the involvement of the activist investor Starboard into Salesforce a few quarters ago. So after these results from their Q2 quarter, so what is the valuation for Salesforce after basically slight drop, but still after their minus 30% drawdown from their all-time high? So what we are seeing today is that the PE for Salesforce is establishing at 21 in terms of forward price to earning ratio, their forward price to operating cash flow, which is I think the best metrics for Salesforce, at around 15.4, forward price operating cash flow at 16.5, and forward EV to EBITDA at 13.5. So what we are saying is that actually Salesforce come down to actually a pretty reasonable valuation for a company its size and its growth, so around 10%. I think that especially the price to operating cash flow on a forward basis is actually reasonable. It's not dirt cheap, but it's not expensive today, I think, after the drop. And what we are seeing that the valuation for Salesforce today is, I think, quite reasonable. But the reason to buy or not Salesforce actually does not lie into its valuation. And so what we have to consider is what's the future for Salesforce, and if they can actually sustain the growth that they have today, and are they going to be impacted by AI going forward. So the story actually for Salesforce have long been that the stock was actually growing very fast and that it was actually quite expensive. But what we have seen is that the growth has actually decelerated, the growth has been slowing down, and the valuation has contracted in the result to that. And so today the story about Salesforce is actually quite different. It's not so much of a growth company, but I think it's actually a growth at reasonable price company today, given the valuation and given the moderate growth that they have at around 10%. So the question now is that, is it going to continue? So the first thing that I want to address is that, well, thanks to the activist investors coming into Salesforce. So there are a lot of practices that have been cleaned up within Salesforce. So we are seeing that Salesforce today is much more actually rational in terms of the expenses that they have. So we have seen that translated into their operating margin, which is actually great. We are seeing that also with the share repurchases, which is actually pretty good. It's not at the PayPal level, but it's actually pretty good. And what we are seeing is that now Salesforce is becoming a much more mature company. We just hope that Mark Benioff is going to stop this acquisition that doesn't really make sense all the time, and that they're going to consolidate into their core asset, which is that they are providing actually indispensable services to a lot of different companies. And I think the crux of the argument for Salesforce lie into that. So investors today, they have to decide, is Salesforce going to be eaten by AI, or is it going to thrive thanks to AI, and especially the agentic future that we are seeing today with AI? So the first narrative we have with Salesforce today is that AI is going to actually take their lunch, and that a lot of different companies are going to use AI to vibe code the same type of services that Salesforce is going to provide. I think that for everyone or anyone that has worked in the field, so it's very difficult to actually make the type of software that Salesforce is actually doing. Not that this is a complicated software, but that to maintain that and to have the customer relationship, to actually have it at the scale, is not going to be easy to replicate with AI. And we've seen that with vibe coding and all these different tools. I think that a lot of different companies who are going to try that, they are going to fail, because the most difficult part of software is not just build the software. There are a lot of components to actually consider in terms of maintainability, in terms of upgrade, in terms of updates, in terms of maintaining it with the customer as well. And so I think that CRM, so here Salesforce has a lot of experience working with a lot of different companies at different sizes, and I think that they still have a very good base in terms of CRM. Having said that, there may be a threat if like some agentic AI actually just circumvent altogether the need for a CRM. This might be actually possible in the near future. I don't know, I haven't seen that yet. But today I think that if the thesis is just that companies are going to build their own CRM, they are going to build their own Tableau, for example, their own Slack, I think that this is not going to happen altogether. Now, if we look at Salesforce, I think that what's very interesting is that they are supposed to be the big winner in terms of agentic AI. Why? Because they have the scale to actually deploy this agent into a lot of different companies, into a lot of different sizes, and they already have the CRM, they already have the visualization, they already have all the tools for these companies to be used with Agentforce and agentic AI. So I think that in terms of distribution, so if Salesforce can actually crack and really put to use this agentic AI and monetize that, I think it can be a huge push into their growth. And I think that they are well positioned to actually benefit from that, even though that this has not really materialized yet. But we are seeing that their AI actually revenue is going triple digit as well. Definitely Salesforce is not Palantir in terms of offering, but the fact that this is much more is much easier to actually deploy into enterprises, this is, I think, is going to actually scale pretty well. But today, this is not very clear how they're going to benefit from agentic AI, and so I think that's why investors today, they are not giving them the premium that they could have if it was the case. I think that Palantir has demonstrated much better or in a much better way how they are going to deploy AI into enterprise and into the government rather than Salesforce. And I think that's why a lot of investors are actually choosing to actually invest into Palantir much more. And I think that Palantir is actually a good comparison to Salesforce, even though that their offering is completely different. But what we are seeing is that AI is actually making a lot of different fields in software merge together. And so if companies today, they are trying to use this type of agentic AI, they can definitely bypass companies using ERP and CRM. So I think that this is a different paradigm today that Palantir is showing with their ontologies, and this could definitely hurt Salesforce. So I think that Salesforce today has really to bring their A game into the agentic AI party, because it's going to be a very tough field if definitely companies starts to use agent and go beyond the CRM today. But I think this is not the future that we are seeing right at the moment. So I think that my takeaway for Salesforce today, even after this Q2 2025 earnings, is that it's very hard to say where Salesforce is actually going. They are actually today investing a lot into AI. They are not a clear winner in terms of AI. So it's very hard to say if they are a winner or loser looking at the field. And I think that given the valuation and given the growth, there are so much better opportunities in the market. One could be Google, for example. Google is at a very similar valuation as Salesforce, but growing faster in terms of revenue or in terms of EPS, and has a much better position as an AI leader. So I definitely think that there are much better opportunities in the market than Salesforce. So that's why, in my opinion, this is not financial advice. Investor should better prioritize other opportunities like Google rather than Salesforce, even though Salesforce has actually reached a fair level in terms of valuation. So if you're interested in other analysis like this one, so please tell me what you think about Salesforce in the comments. Please check my other videos, please subscribe, and I'll see you in another one. Bye.